Welcome to Real Money Talks. Real strategies from the moneymakers and the world changers that you can use to make millions, keep those millions, multiply your wealth, and build your team. Here's your host, author of 5 New York Times bestsellers, money expert on Dr. Phil, CNN, CNBC, The Street TV, Fox News, and The View, Loral Langemeier.
Welcome, welcome, welcome.
Hi.
Hello. Where are you calling in from, Veronica?
Memphis, Tennessee. How
Perfect.
are you?
I'm good. So go ahead and ask your question.
So my question is, how do I best implement your strategies to build legacy and generational wealth for my son and the rest of my family?
Love that question. And it's a big one. It's a big umbrella question. So those of you who haven't got my book, The Make Your Kids Millionaires, it is written from 0 to 18 and beyond, and everything that you should do given the age of your child. So I would use that as a reference guide. But to answer specifically, when you think about legacy, I think that is really, and again, all of you start writing down, these answers. And as we come into the Gen W conference, we will be doing this. It'll be a very interactive doing conference where you're going to be writing at least the beginnings of your legacy. You'll be given a journal when you walk in, kind of a workbook to go through. But it's like, for me, I want to be known, like as I exit this, version of life, as someone who's really worked on this conversation with money and changed the conversation to what real millionaires and real wealthy people, because no one is talking about it, candidly telling you the truth. And so for me, I want to leave a legacy of my financial literacy, my financial education. I want to leave that legacy for not only 2.3 generations, but for lifetimes after that. So what does that require? Well, that requires my kids to first buy into this, right? And I think for a lot of you, you're not having family meetings. So the Gen W conference, we were going to teach you how to have a family meeting. We're like, what are the questions? How do you engage this conversation? So not only is what is the legacy, right? So legacy is what people are going to be, you're going to be known for, or your family will be known for after you've, walked off the planet. But the beginning steps of that are with your initial children. So the way that I did that, I talk about it in the book, Kyle talks about it, is I had my kids involved in being entrepreneurs, really, really young. They both started companies, they had little, side businesses and little side hustles. And I'm talking little stuff like a little smoothie business to, I think Tristan's her first one. They're still around the offices, this little paper wallet she used to build. So you've got to get your kids involved and excited, because if your kids are not financially literate, and those of you listening out there, if you're about to inherit money, and welcome, oh, thank God you're here, because you can get financially, literate and understanding what's coming to you and how it's coming to you. But for you, Veronica, it's setting up, what do you want for you, your son, and your family? Like, are they all going to get it? Is it just going to be your son to get it? And there is like a whole series of thinking about that, right? And then inside of a trust. So here's the required pieces to do it properly. You have to be incorporated. You have to. And then that company is who is going to employ you and your children, and potentially the parts of your family. Ideally, though, each family has its own company and its own spending. And then if you want a family umbrella company, you can have that, but you have to have a company, right? And at 18 years old, you can all get a company. And that company has to be held in trust. And Scott's not able to be with us, I don't believe, tonight, but we have a company, Generational Wealth. I think Andrew or Steve, you probably
Scott
have.
is on.
Oh, Scott is on. Okay,
Yeah.
awesome. Well, then he can put his Calendly link in there, and or one of you could do that for him, and set up to talk to him about getting an entity, getting your trust done. So you'd start, Veronica, with what's called a family trust, which is really just kind of you, your son, your immediate family, and your companies are held in trust, your home's held in trust. So there's a process to the trust that most people don't thoroughly get done. It's called funding your trust, which means everything you own goes to the trust. Because if it doesn't, you will be I'm just called a victim like Justin Bennett. And Justin's been a huge part of our community, but he came to us because he didn't understand the entity paperwork, the trust paperwork. And when his partner died, he lost everything to the state of Missouri and Kansas to probate. So that's why Scott and I have done an amazing recording called Don't Let Your Estate Go to the State. Because I don't care if all of you out there are only worth, say, 100 grand, 40 to 50,000 of that is going to end up going to whatever state you live in. And if you're in California, New York, I know, Scott, whichever state you want to add to it, but New York, California, I know like Philadelphia is for like Pennsylvania is horrible for trusts. And I can't hear you, Scott, if you want to add some.
Yeah, so absolutely New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, California. I mean, the probate is atrocious. So yeah, absolutely need to have everything tied into not, and see, that's the thing is a lot of people say a living trust. Well, it's really more of a comprehensive estate plan, which includes multiple different things, not just your last will and testament or your living trust. I mean, there's 5 or 6 primary components to a trust in order to avoid the probate process. So yeah.
Yep. And then once you start growing your wealth more, you're probably going to add, irrevocable trusts, right? So the irrevocable trusts cannot be touched. Once you set them up, like I set one for my son, Logan, and my daughter, Tristan, and then together they have another one. And so everything will go on to them. But inside those trusts, and this is where the generational wealth really, the planning, like Scott said, the estate planning comes into play, is you have to decide, like, let's just say your kid goes rogue, right? And they're starting to spend their money in a very irresponsible way. They're doing behaviors that you are not agreeing with. They're not becoming financial business savvy. You can actually, through the trust documents, and that's what Scott and our company Generational Wealth actually will do for you, is help you set these up, ask those questions, because you can actually block them. Like, as a single mom with interesting, biology from my 2, kids, if they're known to have passed on any of their money, because some of the behaviors of those men, they will be blocked immediately from the estate. Now, their financial executors can actually unblock them once they shape up and start behaving. So a lot of you always say, and I hear this all the time, but how do you manage your kids and the grandkids and the great grandkids and those generations from the grave? You manage through trust. So Scott, since you're here, welcome. I'm glad you're here tonight. And what you will notice in a lot of my questions is I will bring on some of our experts to help supplement. I mean, I'll give you the answers, and then you're going to meet with the experts to get things done. What else would you kind of add to that? I would say if you're just making a checklist, just answer very succinctly. You need an entity, minimum. You need a trust. And I'm going to say, if you want to load it up, you get some darn good life insurance. And we have a couple of different expert partners that would get life insurance, because I've literally had families do the entity and the trust. They're making money, they're making hundreds of thousands, but not millions, but they can qualify for $1 million, $2 million, $3 million life insurance policy. So yeah, when you die, you load it up. And then, I mean, honestly, a lot of the originating families that, have acquired enormous wealth in the world, somebody had to die, and they were loaded up with an amazing amount of life insurance that then went to those trusts. And then very behaviorally through the trust, those were managed. I mean, there's other trusts that are more sophisticated called non-depletion trusts, which means they can never take money from the trust. You can borrow the money, you can apply for a business loan. I mean, Scott and I could probably talk for hours, but I just wanted to give you some of like the minimums in my mind is an entity, a trust, and an insurance policy. And with that done properly, you can start loading up your kids, with the right terms of how you want to handle that generational wealth specifically. And then, if you want to handle that with your, family, like your siblings. I mean, you get to define all of that in these trust documents. So Scott, I'll just kind of wrap that up if there's anything else you want to add to that.
No, I think you hit that right on the head. I mean, with life insurance, that's what's ultimately going to create the generational wealth. But I mean, again, the beautiful thing about the life insurance plus the entity and the trust is you have the ability to borrow against it, right? To fund other deals that you want to get into and still have that cash value at the end. So I'll just wrap it with that. But yeah, you hit everything 100% right on the head.
So does that help, Veronica? I know it's a whole bunch. Invite any of you who need those 3 things. The first 2 things would be handled by Scott, the entity and the trust. And Molly is out behind the scenes while also coordinating this event. So Molly, if you want to put our phone number, 775-588-9200, she will refer you out to our insurance expert so we can help you get those 3 things set up. Does that help, Veronica? Any other questions or supplemental questions to that?
Thank you very much. That was super helpful. The only other thing I was kind of wondering about as you were speaking about avoiding probate and setting up the insurances, as an entrepreneur, we also have to account for like private health insurance.
Yep.
What are your thoughts regarding private health insurances that can be linked to HSAs? for
We love that. I do think, I mean, that's a little bit later stage. I'll give you the first stage that most people miss is your entity. Just, and this is just for the basic healthcare in the beginning, right? When you're not up to that 7-figure mark, I would get an entity and have that entity give you a very, very small employment. As we work with you, we can tell you how much that employment should be. And Veronica, I'm gonna have you follow up on also a private call with Laura. So, you know, I'm all over recordings. I'm a single mom, 2 kids that make $48,000, and that is my payroll. So then when you go apply for healthcare and a health plan, especially in the United States, then you don't say what your company's making, if it's making 6 or even 7. I mean, never, like, why that's not the question. The question is, what's your income? So then you just disclose your small little paycheck, and then that small paycheck allows you and affords you very, very good health insurance. There's a whole process. And then later stages, absolutely get an HSA and fund that as much as you can, because it's a company write-off, and you can pretty much privately and self-insure, which is what a lot of families do. That doesn't mean, I think there's a huge mistake. I think a lot of people think when they hear self-insure that they're not doing that primary initial care from, like, you know, one of the bigger Aetna, Blue Cross. They're still doing that too. This is just supplemental for long-term and other kinds of healthcare. So absolutely, we support all of those. Really important. But I think where people, I see it all the time, where people mess up on the payment of healthcare is they don't employ themselves. They just share their total distribution of their LLC or their C Corp or their S Corp. They didn't ask for your company distributions. They asked for your income, and your income is your paycheck. So that is a really low number. Really low number. Okay. And we have that too. Yeah, Lisa. So we have those amazing. It's really important though. That piece though of employment is where most people miss. So great question. Glad you're here. Stay in the chat, and we're going to keep moving on. Let's go to Debbie McKinney. Debbie, you've been very active in our community. You have a great question. So if you want to swap out those folks, Scott, let's go to Debbie McKinney next. And as we transition this, so for example, Veronica, we will make sure Scott has your information. We will make sure our insurance folks have your information, and you'll be following up with Laura. Right. So we will always have actions from these calls. So we make sure that you actually don't have, you know, just ask the question or still hanging out there. We want to make sure that you actually get what you need and get those things handled. Otherwise, it's just an interesting conversation. We want to get conversations to the right action. So
I just put Scott's Calendly link in the chat, so you can use that to schedule with Scott if you need to speak with him.
Yeah, I was going to say, Andrew, I just sent that over, but I did put that in there. So thank you.
And Laura, if you want, you can just go kind of behind the scenes on DM, and we will as well. So Molly, if you would like to make sure Laura gets, Veronica gets Laura's direct cell phone number, then we go straight to it. We're just going to get right to it. Make sure you get taken care of right away. So thank you. Hi, Debbie. Great question. And it's a really, really juicy one given the environment that's going on right now. So what's your question, young lady? And tell us where you're calling in from. You're on mute, sweetie. Here we go again.
So I'm Debbie McKinney, Debbie with the Y, calling in from Niceville, Florida. And my question is that what due diligence needs to be done before investing in cryptocurrency? And I don't mean just like go and invest in like Bitcoin or something like that, because there's, we see some friends making some very good money, but we know that there's a lot to it. So what do I need to know to make a good decision?
Well, great question. And right now, on the heels of, if you guys haven't seen, Voyager just went down. Hundreds of millions of dollars are locked and blocked and gone. And so I want to speak to that a little bit. Luna went down a while ago. There's some amazing documentaries of, young Gen Zs, millennials coming out, locking the blockchain. And because of Web 3.0 or the dark web or however those blockchains went on, and again, they're gone. And most of them are international companies, so there's no litigation that's going to probably ever surrender that money back. It'll be interesting to watch those. So I would just say, watch those cases. But I would go back to what Kelly Korshik always says, who actually runs iFlip, and actually start with that. Those of you that want to be the most passive, if you don't know Kelly and his background, he designs the most extraordinary algorithms. It's all software driven, so there's no financial advice. But you can actually do smart folios in a variety of cryptocurrencies that he has already vetted and done all of that work. And yes, there's an internal broker that holds the wallets. But for some of you who are just kind of baby stepping in, using that software is probably some of your safest. To your point though, Debbie, I would not leave the big currencies behind, like the Bitcoins and the Ethereums, even in helium, like helium is becoming a data source. So there's some just what I call stock and block that have been around a long time. So obviously the duration, but here's some specifics for all of you. And Alex Stern and I've talked about this a lot of folks that we do some cryptocurrencies and move kind of outside of what I call the stock and block, coins and tokens. Are there real people behind them that you can actually talk to, pick up the phone? They're real humans. There's not just this fake board of elusive people that are out there. Do they have LinkedIn profiles? Can you do a background check on them? Like, are they real humans? And I think that is for me, it's rule number one. If you're not a real human and I can't invest with you because there's somebody trading that, and actually building up that project behind the scene, it is not just a bunch of AI and bots. So I would say real humans, number one. Background checks and real companies. Like, is there a real company? Is there a real entity that's been formed? Scott can double check that in, a lot of the countries around the world. Are there countries that are friendly to doing business with the United States if you're US or Canadian? And if they're not, and you can't move money back and forth, like in the African countries, I have been there. I've owned banks over there. I've had companies over there. It's very difficult to transact back and forth. Especially with the US, easier to Canada. So a lot of our South Africans who've had a heck of a time we've helped them. I mean, we relocate to Canada. So I say real people, real countries, real projects. They have a real business plan. I mean, there's nothing outside of, I'd say, a lot of the due diligence that I've taught for now 2 decades that is different about cryptocurrency, other than the fact it's more challenging to go find the information. So if it's that challenging and it's that secretive, and there's so many scams right now. And I see it over and over and over. There's people who float them around, even our, big table community. Some different scams get floated around. If it feels, smells, and breathes like a Ponzi scheme, it probably is. I think the urgency of people just because, oh my gosh, it's a deal and I have to get in. Really, there's always deals. So I see very, very cautious about that, as well as the opinion mill. I think there's too many opinion mills where, you're just asking or you're listening to people on whether it's YouTube, TikTok, Instagram. Again, I'd go back to the stock and block. Are there real people? Are there real companies? Is there a real business plan? Is it a real project? And can you do a background check, and do they have real profiles? I mean, real people. So, those are really, I'd say it's kind of basic, but that's harder to find than you think. Andrew or Scott, is there anything you want to add into that? Because that's a tough one, but I think so many of these projects, it's just like, oh, just get a MetaMask account and, it'll be this thing and then this other thing will happen. And it's very gamified. And so
yeah, like what's the reason behind the cryptocurrency? Like, you're creating a currency. What for? What does it do technologically that is better, safer, sexier than all the ones that have been done in the past, right? That's where the due diligence comes in. Anybody can create a cryptocurrency in like 20 minutes. It's not hard, but getting
and we learned how to create, an NFT. The difference between our NFT is those smart contracts. So we have a utility behind it. So it's very clear what you're going to get for $100 courageous. And those of you who haven't done that, there's still the courageous for $100. It's a great little step in. Andrew actually created some very easy, simple videos. How do you get, the accounts that you need set up so you can get your first wallets? Just get started in that, at least the NFT side of it. The NFTs, in my opinion, are going to be longer standing, especially those that are going to utility contracts. There's already real estate companies that are using the NFTs and smart contracts as real estate closing contracts. I know gas and oil, mineral rights, water rights, a lot of it's going to be moving that direction. I'd say more than just some coin or token that can be opened overnight. I think those smart contracts and the utility contract will be a way that a lot of people are going to do business. I mean, Steve, if you want to add in, I mean, Steve you didn't get off. I was actually invited to go to a medical crypto blockchain panel that I was on. And it was so interesting hearing these doctors do all their research and actually how they're getting a lot of their funding is through the smart contracts of NFTs and through the blockchain. So I think there's a lot to say that's going to be good about it. And I think really, Debbie, the question, from your, so given that there's that much, right, that is going to be real and stock and block, I call it, just the normal transactions will move that way. That's going to be the healthy side of it. Are there going to be all sorts of people putting out all sorts of different coins? Yes. And just recently listening to some really high level podcasts of some guys I really respect in this space, they think it's going to whittle down to, several dozen coins and tokens that really become the currency. And the rest are just going to be interesting projects that'll probably end up falling away. Or if they get enough traction, they'll keep gamifying and playing that. Anything else, Andrew, Steve, Scott, you guys want to add?
So whose podcast do you listen to that you really respect?
I can text those to you.
Okay.
I can text them to you. The one I'll say very publicly and live is I love Jim Blasco's stuff. He's had the Amazon Bitcoin radio show forever. So anybody around him who he recommends. So I kind of started with there, and then you kind of move out, and you'll start seeing who's really got kind of a normal conversation, and those who have a little bit kind of sway a little too far out, to a conversation that's interesting.
Right. Well, this started with a family member who got in trouble because he didn't understand the rules. And so he was reaching out, and they're like, who knows about crypto and blockchain? I'm like, I know a little bit. So I know more than anybody else, but still have a lot to learn.
Well, I think everybody does. But what's, been devastating is watching a company as big as Voyager just evaporate overnight. I don't know if anybody's got any updates on that, but that's an interesting one, and including Luna. I mean, Luna was very big in that medical community where I talked, and a lot of people put a lot of money in, and it was just gone overnight. So again, who's in control of, was it ever really a blockchain? It was just some, interesting website that just showed, because we've seen it now. I mean, we've had to build it. Andrew's had to build it. Ben's has been behind it. Steve, I mean, our team has been on that side of putting up those NFTs and what it takes. And it could be done in a very simple, where we could just take it all away. Like literally we could. And it's interesting. It's interesting to watch what's secured and what's not secured. Anything you guys want to add about that? I think it's really important. So I think it's not only a good question, it's a continuing conversation that we will continue to dig deeper and deeper into.
Right. Okay. Thank you, Loral.
Thank you, Debbie. So this is Loral, and you've been listening to my podcast. If you've enjoyed this, I have a couple of things you can do that are completely up to you. Number one, take my quiz. Go to integratedwealthsystems.com and take the quiz. You will find that there's one of 4 personalities, financial personalities we call them, that you're going to fall into. So as you take the quiz, it'll actually go through and identify, are you, in stagnant cash flow, right? Are you overpaying taxes? Do you have debt issues? Are you a lifestyle junkie? Where are you? And then from there, it goes to a video that actually gives you some solutions on how to correct that problem. So again, go to integratedwealthsystems.com, take my quiz, and we'll go from there.
Thanks for listening to the Real Money Talks podcast. Your host has been Loral Langemeier, author of 5 New York Times bestsellers, money expert on Dr. Phil, CNN, CNBC, The Street TV, Fox News, and The View. Want to learn more about off-Wall Street investing, tax strategies, and multi-million-dollar business strategies? Visit liveoutloud.com/podcast for past episodes, show notes, and resources. For some special wealth-building gifts only for Loral's podcast listeners, visit liveoutloud.com/podcast gifts. Do you have a burning question for Loral? Visit askloral.com to submit your question, and it may just be covered on a podcast episode. So stay tuned and be sure to subscribe to get new episodes every week.